Okay, everyone, welcome to week 9 of our 10-week journey together. We are reaching the tail end of it, and it's been quite a journey for sure. We've gone through so many different adventures, so many different topics, so many different themes, so many different journeys, and now really we're getting into an area that is relevant to every single person, which is developing more relationship intelligence and understanding the different dynamics and the arts of communication and how our intimate relationships mirror our relationship with life. So, this is there's a lot there. There's a lot that could be a very, very long and in-depth type of call. So I've synthesized what I think are the core principles of this particular topic, and we're going to use that to navigate this. It's quite an in-depth subject. So I'm going to go right ahead and jump into this, and then through the call, we're going to break it up and have a little bit of either Q&A or just comments from each individual just to share their thoughts around this. So, yeah, relationship intelligence. This is one of the most important things that we all need to understand and learn and master in our own lives, because one thing for sure is that we're all dealing with relationships. We're all building relationships. We're involved in relationships. There's all kinds of relationships, but there's themes and principles that are universal no matter what the relationship is. So the first thing is really the art and mastery of communication that is universal for all relationships. So first and foremost, any relationship that we're having with another human being it's dependent on the relationship that we have with ourselves, right? If we don't have a solid, congruent, and honest relationship with ourselves, then our ability to have a real relationship and the depth of that relationship with another person is going to be limited to the degree that we are able to relate with ourselves. So that's the first place to start. Most people focus on communication with other people, and that's essential. That's critically important to learn how to communicate with people, how to receive feedback, how to give feedback, how to really be in that dynamic dance. And your ability to communicate and have inner dialogues with yourself is going to dramatically increase your ability to connect with other people. So that's the first place, is that what's your relationship with yourself? And that's quite a deep question. It's quite a deep question, and it's multi-layered. Your relationship with yourself. How do you communicate with yourself? How do you receive communication from yourself? A lot of people don't want to admit that they talk to themselves, or that they're constantly in some sort of dialogue, but that's actually a natural thing, to be in a dialogue with yourself, because there's different facets of yourself that go beyond the personality level. So you might find yourself having this like dialogue. Maybe you're asking yourself a question, right? That's a form of communication. So sometimes what we do is we post a question out to the world to try to get an answer. But I would recommend that if you're stumped with something, really present it to your higher self, if you want to use that word, because that's ultimately what you're doing when you're having a dialogue with yourself. You're posing a question, and then there's an answer, right? Have you ever asked yourself a question, then you got an answer? Okay, well, what's that? What's that about? Well, it's pretty in depth. It's pretty deep to go down that rabbit hole. But basically, let's just say that you have, I won't say you have all the answers. I don't really believe that. That doesn't really stand true to me, because if we had all the answers, then we wouldn't need other people. And we wouldn't need to go outside of ourselves to investigate and to learn. Um, so I think it's a dual process. We do have the answers. However, we also have to develop ourselves enough to be able to learn new perspectives. The value of relationships is that it's not so much that we're seeking knowledge per se, it's that we're able to get different perspectives from other people and from the world around us. And those different perspectives help to shape our own perspective so we can see things from different angles. So what I've realized is that the more perspectives that I can hold without being in judgment or opposing any other perspectives, the more perspectives I can hold in a single thought process, the better I can see the entire equation from all angles, right? If I'm not able to see multiple perspectives and I only have my own perspective to look at something, I'm going to be very limited and I'm going to be biased. I'm going to develop a bias towards that particular perspective, and I'm not going to be able to see other people's perspective. I'm not going to be able to relate with other people, and therefore I'm basically creating a wall between myself and the world outside of myself. So through connecting with ourselves and really understanding our own process, our own thought process, our own emotional process, we're able to actually relate better with other people and create deeper connection. So that's something right there. So yeah, let me just kind of bullet point that, just end on that note in terms of like developing that relationship with ourselves, because if we don't know who we are, we don't know what makes us tick, and we don't know what our own unique motivations are, then what ends up happening is that we try to substitute that lack of self-knowledge, and we try to substitute it with worldly knowledge or external knowledge or other people's value systems, other people's moral systems, and we just kind of adopt that and put it on top. Kind of like, it's like if you have a sculpture, instead of refining the sculpture to get to its core essence, you're just adding clay on top of it, right? And then all of a sudden what you notice is that you just have tons and tons of ideas about ideas. You have belief systems about belief systems, but they're not necessarily intrinsic to your own experience. And this is what I mean by getting to know yourself, is that you want to know what do you believe based on your direct experience, but based on what you know is true for you. And then being able to corroborate that, being able to connect that to maybe different pieces of information that help you explain that, help you articulate it in a way that seems logical and understandable, and a way that you can communicate that to other people when need be. Because the other thing with developing relationships is that we need to be able to communicate our ideas, our perspectives, our processes to certain people in our lives in order for us to get along, in order for us to get what we want, right? And also to help other people get what they want as well. So that's first and foremost, just understanding who you are. That's pretty much what the entire program really is about anyways, is just understanding, who we are, what truly motivates us, what our values are, what's important to us, and learning to be honest with ourselves. That in of itself is not a trivial thing. That's a big thing in of itself, because most people are telling themselves little white lies all day long as a way to rationalize the things in their life that they know are not really, they're not bringing them fulfillment, things that they know are not quite right. So we tell ourselves little white lies about the job that we have, or the relationship that we have, or our financial situation, or whatever, because we're avoiding conflict. we're avoiding tension, we're avoiding pain or fear or something that would bring up something uncomfortable within us that we have to look at. And so, how honest are you with yourself? The degree that you're able to be completely honest with yourself is the degree that you can be completely honest with another human being. Wonder why we have so many relationship issues in our world right now. So many people getting divorced or getting married, for that matter. So many people just confused about relating ships. Well, if we're telling ourselves lies all day long, whether they're little white lies or they're big, bold, fat lies, doesn't matter. A lie is still a lie, right? Then we're going to be creating conflicts. We're going to be creating multiple energy loops in our world. We're going to be creating confusion, and the people in our life aren't going to really know who we actually are. And one of the greatest needs, if not the greatest need, is to be understood and appreciated, and to be connected with, to have connection. So self-honesty is the first step towards creating greater connection with other people, because then from there you can actually be honest about whatever the thing is with other people. And that's absolutely key and critical. So let's talk about communication for a second, certain communication dynamics. So one of the issues with communication is that most people have learned to talk, but they haven't learned to listen. And most communication actually happens through listening. It doesn't happen just through what we say. And a lot of it is actually how we say things. So it's tonality. And in the English language, it's very dry. It's very black and white. It's very kind of almost mechanical. So it's not the same of, like, I studied Japanese and Korean language. And when you study those languages, you realize that it's infinitely more complex. And it's actually, there's multiple ways to say a single word. And it's based on tonality. So it's the tone that you say it in that actually conveys the meaning of the word. Like even something as simple as hello or goodbye, right? In Korean, that would be, it's been like 10 years since I studied the Korean language through Taekwondo. I used to be really adept at it, actually. Kamsamnida. There's like, kamsamnida is like thank you, right? There's multiple ways to say it. There's Daedani kamsamnida, which is like, man, what was it? That was like deep, deep gratitude. Like, thank you, deep. And kamsamnida is just like, it's like, thank you. Daedani kamsamnida is like deep thank you, like deep gratitude, right? So there's different, so the tone, so there's a different meaning built into that language. So what I'm saying is that that's I'm going on two different thoughts here, but that's one thing. When you're communicating something, consider where you're communicating from versus just what you're communicating, because where you communicate from carries the words into the heart of the person. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do when we're in communication. We're trying to land something within that person. We're trying to connect with that person, right? Okay, so that's that part. Now as far as the other side of things, which is listening. When you're listening to somebody, you're able to get much more information, right? Most people, when they're listening, they're not really listening. They're actually waiting for their turn. They're thinking about what they're going to say and how they're going to respond to that person. So they're not actually listening to the person. They're definitely not feeling where that person is coming from, right? So think about a relationship, think about maybe a business conversation or something. When you're in dialogue with someone, you want to do far more listening than you're doing talking. In a coaching, obviously this is a different, it's a different case here. But ultimately, even in this example, I've connected with each person on this call individually ahead of time. So there's a level of listening and receiving information and receiving where each individual is at that's allowed me to create a container to support everyone as a whole. And that's why it's not just me talking every call, but then we have to balance that out by having everybody else have a space to speak and share. So there's the reciprocation and feedback within the communication. There always has to be a reciprocation, a receiving and a giving, a win-win, in other words. Anytime you're having a conversation with someone, try placing your focus on how much can I listen to that person and ask questions instead of just statements. Asking more inquisitive questions, because when you ask questions, it gives that person the opportunity to actually share more, but then it gives you the opportunity to learn more. And then from there, your communication becomes more effective, because now since you've learned, or since you're receiving from that person, what you say back to them can be more effective and more succinct and more kind of just like an arrow, instead of just like firing 1,000 arrows at somebody, like vomiting on them or something. Now you're actually tuning in, like, okay, what's going to be what's most important to say to that person based on the information that I'm getting in this dialogue. It's that kind of thing. It's being effective as a communicator, which is both in how you speak, but more so probably 80% in how you actually listen. Okay. So now that we've talked about that, let's get into some of the juicy stuff here. So let's talk about the connection between our intimate relationships, sexuality, health, and money. That's an interesting pivot. By the way, if anyone's able to come on video, that would be amazing. If you're not, that's okay. But speaking of communication and developing relationships, it is far better for everyone to be on camera, particularly for my purposes, because I like to see the people I'm talking to. If you're not able to, it's all good. I totally get it. By the way, this is why when I do prospecting calls with people, whether it's for my coaching programs or it's for Purium, I tend to like to get them on a face-to-face Zoom call, because it just does so much more work for me. And here's the thing about all of this. The reason why people are so challenged in this department is because they don't know how to be completely vulnerable. Why don't we know how to be vulnerable? Well, we don't know how to be ourselves. That's what that comes down to. You could say all kinds of things like, I don't trust myself, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, that's fine. But really, it's like you don't know yourself. We don't know ourselves enough to actually show up as we are. So we have all these kind of social masks and all these different things. But when you can actually show up face to face, eye to eye with somebody, and they can see you, they can feel you, they actually get that visceral connection, the level of trust and openness that's created goes way beyond any tactics or any strategies that you could possibly use to try to get somebody to do something. And this is another thing too I need to point out about relationships and communication, is that the most effective communication and the most effective relationships are the ones that don't have an agenda tied to them. The most effective communication in any relationship is when you don't have an agenda tied to it. And so that's really coming from your heart, right? Not being attached to an outcome, not trying to get what you want. And this is something that still happens so much, even like when I'm talking to people are like, what am I going to get out of it? What am I going to get out of it? It's like, okay, well then, I mean, if that's where you're coming from, then there's some more work that has to be done there, because it's not about what you're going to get. It's about how can you access more availability within yourself to give. Life is about giving. It's not about getting. The only reason that we should be focused on getting anything is so we have more to give. And that's an infinite wellspring. That's an infinite wellspring of abundance that's available to us. But, it requires authenticity. It requires vulnerability to be able to access that. And this is why so many people are challenged, as I mentioned before. Authenticity, vulnerability, and non-attachment. Now, does that mean that there isn't something you would prefer? Say you're having a communication with your spouse or something, and the best way to get what you want is to find out what somebody else wants. And then find out how you can help them get that in direct proportion to you getting what you want. So for basic example is like, if you have a client, right? How are you going to help a client? How are you going to enroll a client into whatever, your program or something, if you're a coach? Well, you should probably figure out what it is that they want. What is it that they need or want in their life? What is it that they desire? And if you honestly know that you can support that person and help that person get that, then by simply focusing on helping them, you will get what you want, the form of like a new client or something, or a new business brand partner, right? But the scarcity mind, the fear-based, short-term focused mind is always focused on what it can get. So it bypasses that particular thing. And then people feel that though, right? That's the whole thing about communication not being verbal, not being based on what you say. It's how you say it. And it's where you're coming from. So this is why I take it back to the very beginning, which is your relationship with yourself is going to be the degree that you can have an actual relationship with another person. So we have to dial that in first. But moving on. Okay, so the connection between our intimate relationship, sexuality, health, and money. Okay, let's dive into that. Well, there's a lot to that. Well, let's just say all of those things are intimately connected, and they're largely one of the same. So money, sexuality, health, vitality, intimate relationships, they all kind of ride along the same ley line, the same bandwidth of energy. I think talking about sexuality is probably a really good place to go here. This is something that I've been looking very deeply into, cultivating and working within myself, and more recently now it's like it's a whole nother level. And I don't mean sexuality in the way that we think about it. I mean vital life force, creative energy. I'm not going to get into a talk about like the application of that. I'm just going to talk about the energy of it. You can connect the dots how you will. Let's just say that your sexual energy, your vital life force energy, is the magnifying, the magnetic energy, the electromagnetic energy that you have within you to cultivate and to manifest everything that you want to have in your life. And if you want to go a lot deeper into that, there's certain programs, there's a lot of teachings on the internet. My partner Solara actually is going more in that direction to show people how to like really master that energy. And she's a master manifester, like on a whole other level. So, definitely someone I'd highly recommend following. But just to keep it connected here with all of this, that particular energy that's your power source. That's your vitality. That is your living life force. And that is the energy that you can move through your body. Let's just call it Kundalini life force for lack of another term, right? That energy that essentially you can direct and move throughout your body. In our society, that energy gets hijacked and distorted and put into kind of like perverted directions. And this also connects to your intimate relationships, obviously, right? Because the more you can connect with that energy within yourself, the more you can open yourself up and really, have that incredible intimate connection relationship with your partner, that I think everybody really, really wants, and that creates more vulnerability. It creates more availability, more connection, more depth, more trust, all those things that we all want in relationship. But it also creates more power. Let's say, for example, this is all women here, so right now on this call, so it's a little bit different from a male perspective. Let's use this example. One of my friends one time told me, I told him many years ago that I was ready to really experience having a lot more financial abundance in my life. I was telling him about this, and what he told me was, well, what I hear you saying, Ronnie, is that you want to experience more energy. I think I mentioned this in our last call. And I was like, wow, yeah, that's true. Like, I want to experience more energy. And again, we might get caught up on like that being money, right? But it's really just experiencing more energy and having a greater capacity to actually hold more energy in our life, in our body, if you will. And the other thing he said to me after that was, well, then don't go masturbating your energy. And I thought about that. I was like, wow, that's interesting that you say that. A little bit different physiologically for men in that direct example. He was speaking metaphorically, but then that's when I really started thinking a lot deeper about that, about how we use our sexual energy in terms of like just trying to get off, just trying to relieve pressure, relieve stress or something. But when you study the Taoist teachings around this, you realize that this is not about like stress relief, right? This is not about just like, getting off or getting gratified or something. This is about creating a vortex and using that energy to create a vortex within yourself so you can actually put the potency of that charge into the things that you want to create. It's definitely worth studying more in your own personal investigation, how to actually use that energy, whether you're single or in partnership. It's probably the most powerful thing that you can cultivate and use to actually create the things that you want to create in your life. Now, taking it out of that particular context, let's just move into creativity. Let's just use that word now. It's the same energy that you would imbue upon your creative projects, right? It's that passion, in other words. It's that creative flow, that kind of ecstatic excitement that you feel when you're really focusing on a goal or a dream or a desire that's really exciting to you, right? It's that same excitement, that same rush. It's that creative energy. So let's talk about a little bit of an exercise that you can do to tap into that. One thing that you can do is you can close your eyes and you can focus in your body. Like, where do you feel that? Where do you feel that root chakra power, that grounding, that opening for ecstatic, let's even say pleasure being like a much bigger term than just the body. But where you feel that, right? Because a lot of times what ends up happening is that people have a lot of stuck energy in that particular chakra, that particular area of their life, their area of their body, right? So there's a limitation on how far you can actually go. So let's just use one exercise that you can do. It's a breath work exercise. It's basically the breath of fire. So in yoga traditions, it's called the breath of fire. And it's basically where you're doing rapid fire inhalation, exhalation through your nose like this. Like that. Now, what I'm doing with my diaphragm is I'm squeezing, I'm not doing it hard, but I'm squeezing my solar plexus. Like, well, I'm squeezing, yeah, like right around that area. Like let's just say my abdominal wall. I'm squeezing that a little bit, and it's creating a charge. It's creating an energetic charge as I'm breathing. Now, what ends up happening is you start to build up a fire, an internal fire. So they use this for digestion, but I'm more into using this for like cultivating fiery passion as an energetic for creating whatever it is that I'm visualizing, whatever it is that I'm focused on, or just creating personal power within my body. You can do this anytime you're feeling out of balance, you're feeling off. You can just go back to that, and you can do it in different fluctuations. You can go and then kind of go more, and then go a little quicker. So you're building up that energy in your body, and you're concentrating it so you can actually move that energy in a direction that you want to go. You want to kind of put it into, right? What ends up happening for a lot of people is that they're spewing their energy everywhere, right? And what they're doing is that's basically a mismanagement of sexual energy or life force energy, let's say. And so that comes back to the communication thing. If you're just talking all the time, but can't really like actually get your point across, or you can't listen and kind of hold back and just be present, then what you're doing is you're in my friend Brandon's terms, masturbating your energy. You're spewing your energy out into the world, but it's not really focused. So the communication that you're sending out is convoluted. Does that make sense? It's just kind of like dispersing itself out there, but it doesn't have any real power to it. It doesn't have any direction. It's just like it's dissolving before it lands on anything. There's really no power to it. So what you want to do is actually harness that energy. And then when you're ready to fire the arrow, like a bow and arrow, you're ready to fire the arrow. That arrow goes right on target. Maximum velocity. And another way that we just spew our energy is the endless array of worries and concerns and all the chitter chatter of our mind. It's just a nonstop, going on nonstop. So that's why you have to break that pattern and come back to your center. And so the breath of fire, any good breath work practice, can help you break that pattern, because that's all energy that's being dispersed. Even if it's in your head, it's like etheric energy. It's just going, and it's draining you. It's draining the system. So we want to learn how, through the art of communication, with self-communication, we want to learn how to bring that energy and recycle and circulate that energy throughout ourselves. And that can be as simple as changing your thought patterns, focusing on something more positive, something more empowering, something more productive, and then taking it from there. Using these breathwork practices to anchor in that energy so we can focus it on what we actually want to create instead of endlessly focusing on the things we don't want. Whether that's in relationship to another person, or that's most importantly in relationship to ourselves. So let's draw the connection between this and money, because I brought that up for a moment. Our last call, actually our last two calls, I think, were mostly around this topic. The call number 7 in particular was focused on this. So the thing with money is that money is pretty much it's pretty much energy at this point. energy with imaginary numbers just thrown on a computer screen, and money management issues are usually energy management issues. So if you have an energy management issue, that's the most physical or the most relatable thing that ends up translating into is money. So energy overwhelm will create money concerns, whether you have a lot of money or you don't. It's all relative. People with, billions of dollars, it doesn't matter. There's people millions and millions of dollars, and they're struggling inside to hold on because they're afraid that they're going to lose it, right? So it's all relative. It doesn't really matter what that is in particular. It's an energetic that you have to develop and master and cultivate within yourself if you want to truly be prosperous. This prosperity is a state of being. It's a state of being. It's not dependent on the fluctuation of your income. But it will transform your income for sure. It'll transform your ability to create more and more income for yourself. What does income mean? It's income of energy. Input, output. A lot of times when people have money spending issues, it's because they're not able to manage their own energy. So they have to go outside of themselves to it's an energy exchange. So you're going outside and you're spending energy to get something. But if you're actually focusing your energy in a different way, then you find yourself not actually needing a lot of things. You don't need to go outside of yourself and just spend money just for whatever shits and giggles. Like that's the case for most of us, right? We retail therapy or whatever, and no, it's not wrong or right. It's just like looking at like the reality of the energetics behind it. So that from that perspective, okay, here's the thing. So like when you're cultivating your life force, your kundalini, your sexual energy, and you're actually tapping into that and you're using it for something creative with a focus and a purpose, then your ability to actually manifest things starts to increase. The synchronicities in your life start to increase big time. I mean, I can't even tell you what's going on in my life right now. It's beyond imagination. Like the level of synchronicities that are all coming in. It's like 2 weeks ago, my life was completely different than it is right now. Completely different. And I attribute a lot of that. One of it is the power of intention, which I want to talk about. The power of prayer and the power of intention. And then the other part is starting to really take what I'm talking to you about seriously. Because I've known about this for many years. I've studied it for years. But I wasn't necessarily mature or congruent enough as a man to actually take it completely seriously and follow through with all of it. Which I'm now just kind of, I have a lot more, let's just say, motivation right now in my life to actually do that. So I'm speaking to myself as well as I talk to you. So let's say I'm just thinking, I'm just kind of pausing for a second because there's so many different things here, and I want this to land. Where was I here? We were talking about sexual life force energy. Okay, yeah. Okay, so let me just return back to this thought for a second. Recycling your energy, recirculating your energy instead of ejecting your energy. This is the cornerstone of Taoist health teachings, Ayurveda as well, is to actually cultivate that energy within you and build that energy up, almost like steam in a teapot. Build that energy within yourself, and to make it less esoteric, it's really through breath work. It's through physical movement. It's through things like yoga. It's through how you nourish yourself. living foods, juices, superfoods, herbs, spring water. It's how you nourish your body, and so your body is kind of cultivating, it's building. It's like not getting into arguments, not getting into debacles with other people, not giving your energy away and letting people reroute your energy. It's actually about creating sovereignty and creating boundaries with yourself, which is a huge part of relationship alchemy. Is you got to know how to create boundaries, right? Ideally, you wouldn't have to create boundaries, but that's not the way it is. We have to create some kind of clearly defined boundary where we're not going to let somebody cross that boundary, because then it goes into a direction of being taken advantage of or whatever. It's not reciprocal, in other words. And so when we're in relationship with others, we want to create reciprocal types of dynamics. If somebody is in my life and it's not reciprocal, meaning that I don't like, it's just taking, I will vigilantly pull that thing out, because it's just not even an option. Like, I'm not going to allow people that just take my energy and are not considerate or not willing to be thoughtful enough to make a situation a win-win. Right? This is so important, because that draws your energy out of you and then creates stress and all that kind of stuff. So this is all part of nourishing life force in the body. Okay, let's talk about, I'm going to pause very soon. I want to talk about something, though, that's very relevant and very recent in my life, a new epiphany, a new reinforced epiphany about the power of this. Let's talk about the power of intention. So in our world, it's not that we have an attention deficit disorder, it's that we have an intention deficit disorder. So where you place your attention, that's where energy is going to flow, right? Where you put your intention and attention, that's where energy is going to move. Right? All of your mental energy, all of your emotional energy, your physical energy is going to move towards the thing that you're putting your attention onto. So if we're not intentional with where we put our attention will start hopping from whatever's immediately grabbing our attention. That makes sense. We kind of become like a squirrel, just chasing nuts, just chasing stimulus that just shows up in our world, shiny objects, just things that catch our attention, right? But if we're intentional about what we're choosing to entertain or to put our attention onto, all of a sudden we start to filter out a lot of that old stuff that just isn't relevant to us, that doesn't have anything to do with our goals, doesn't have anything to do with what we want to create. It starts to naturally filter itself from our perspective, from our perceptual awareness. And so you start to notice, as you become more intentional with your life, certain people just kind of disappear, right? They just kind of drop off. Certain habits start to drop off. Certain things start to just seemingly disappear. It's because you're becoming very intentional about what you're creating in your life experience. And so then life starts to mold itself around that. If you ever wonder why maybe you're getting a lot of mixed results, then there's two things. There's two things that happen. One of them is that, which is obvious, which is that you just have scattered attention. So you haven't really clearly defined exactly what it is that you're doing and what's really important to you. So then sometimes, but you have a little bit of energy towards that. So sometimes it's like, okay, you're getting somewhere, but then there's a whole bunch of other static that's coming in, right? So it's like, okay, I'm getting mixed results. I'm getting mixed messages. So the mixed messages is a feedback system alerting to you that, like, okay, like you need to get even more clear. You need to get more dialed in, more intentional. Okay, cool. Now, when you've actually gotten really intentional about an area of your life, then we can use like dating or something as a good example, because this is actually something I went through, and I want to actually share something really powerful with all of you. That's like my own direct life experience, and how the actual like love of my life literally just came into my reality. It was actually really trippy for me to look back on it and to look at how it actually happened, because it's nothing short of just a complete synchronistic phenomena. Like I definitely did not make it happen, but I had my part to play in it, and I want to share that because I think it'll be really, really helpful. So there's a point in our life where, let's say dating, for example, like I was just in this place where like I kind of just wasn't really focused. Like I knew what I wanted as the ultimate, but there was something inside of me that somehow didn't believe that like I could have it, or what I don't even know what the story was. It was just some BS. There was something there though. It was kind of like competing desires, right? So I had competing desires. I had the desire to be in a total sacred union with my life partner. And then I had other desires, which was like not that, just to be blunt about it. So I started to notice there was this inner conflict that was happening. And then, I went into the dating scene, and like, I'd start connecting with different women, just like going out, nothing crazy, but just like going out. And then like, I would find myself like in this repeating pattern of connecting with a woman, but then not really like just kind of like knowing that this wasn't really what I was trying to do. See, these are the little white lies. I'm just being completely real with all of you right now. These are just the little white lies that we tell ourselves. But then there were certain women that would show up in my life that were way more like embodied, way more reflective of that direction that my heart and my soul were moving towards, right? And so it's kind of like I'm getting like mixed signals of my own creation, right? And so one thing happened as I'm going through kind of the dating, and then I realized like this is a complete waste of my time. Like, and I could feel it in my body, because my body would contract every time I would keep trying to do that. My body would contract and be like, "What are you doing? Like, stop." And so eventually, I just decided, like, this is completely ridiculous. This has nothing to do with my purpose or my work or my anything. This has nothing to do with what I really want in my life. So I need to pivot. And so I started to make that intentional shift. And what I noticed was that those energies were still there, and I had to have conversations with certain people to close out old energy loops. I had to have closure conversations so I could make that pivot. Everybody is seen. The energy isn't just lingering. It's just like, okay, we need to close that. And as I moved more and more towards that direction, I could almost like feel a presence in my life. It was very palpable. It was like I could feel this like soulmate energy start to come into my life as I closed out these other loops, these other just miscellaneous energies that I had opened up. And so it was very interesting for me, but I wasn't out of the woods. I still was kind of like moving through that transformation process, which is part of the teaching I'm trying to share through this example, which is that it doesn't happen overnight. It's just a shift of your energy, and your energy shifts progressively as you keep moving towards it. And basically, so leading into the power of intention. Now, here's something that I realized. I had a belief system that in order for me to match, and we've probably all heard this, in order for me to match my perfect partner, my life partner, I would somehow have to be like basically perfect. which was a self-defeating thing, because I knew how not perfect I was in that area. So it was almost like an impossible mission. So I really was like kind of challenged by that whole thing. And so I remember listening to a podcast one day, on relationships and purpose and all this kind of thing. And the individual talking, he was talking about how he basically brought his soulmate life partner into his life, and he recited what's called a soulmate prayer by one of the most famous, maybe the most famous yogi in history, Yogananda. And he basically, it's like two sentences, like one sentence actually, and he just invoked that prayer. And I was at a moment, this is the power of intention, this is the power of prayer, and how it can override everything when you're sincere about it. I was in a moment where I was sincerely desiring that. I knew that was exactly what I wanted. I didn't want any of the other stuff. That was what I wanted to call in. So in that moment, I was genuine and sincere enough within myself, and I recited that prayer a couple times just to myself, by myself, in my car, and then I went about my day, went about my life, right? And so what's interesting about that is that happened. That happened despite, let me turn that off. That exact prayer was answered despite all of my insecurities, despite all of my self-perceived shortcomings. It happened. And so when I looked back on it, I traced it to that moment, because I didn't make this happen. That's another thing about all this, is that we don't have to make miracles in our life happen. But there is something but there is a part that we play in it, and that's the intention. And understanding the power of our intention. And it's not something that we have to repeat every day like a mantra. We just have to be sincere enough in a moment of awareness and clarity to actually, intend sincerely about what it is that we truly, truly want and desire. And then that's how things tend to happen. So that particular example was quite amazing for me, because I was definitely in a place where I definitely was conflicted, let's just say. And I didn't know how to make it happen either. Here's another thing too. And this is all about self-communication. I didn't know how to make that happen. Like, how do I manifest my life partner? Like, that's not like building a business. That's not like super like, it's not really tangible, but somehow that arrives, right? So like, I'm just sharing that example to kind of further articulate the power of intention and the power of clear communication, because you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all your ducks in a row. You just have to be sincere and genuine, because that's how you give intention power. The problem with like affirmations is that affirmations are real. Mantras and affirmations are real for sure. However, the way that most of us engage with it is it's very disassociated, meaning it's very mental. It's like, I'm so grateful now that I have $1 million. I live in my dream home, and I'm with the love of my life and whatever else. But the power of it, and this all ties back. This is all tying back. If you can catch the whole tangential nature of all this, this is all tying back to all the things we talked about, which is generating the power within you. Because when you generate that emotional Kundalini life force energy within you, and you've harnessed enough of it, then all of a sudden, when you affirm something, you actually can give it real power. In that moment where I said that prayer, there was enough power and enough love behind it, and I was connected with myself enough for it to actually land. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this is why harnessing your own internal energy and cultivating that for yourself, whether that's just your morning meditation, your breath work, affirming within yourself what you absolutely desire to create. Having gratitude and appreciation is so key and critical, because what you appreciate will appreciate. What you don't appreciate will depreciate. So this ties into relationships. The key to all relationships ultimately comes down to respect, communication, and appreciation, right? Everyone that's in a relationship knows that it's not actually complicated. It's like, the more love you get, the more love you give. Now, there are dysfunctional relationships, right? But I'm talking about from like a higher perspective. Like, those are situations that's not the scope of what I'm talking about. Just relationship, right? When you give love, you tend to get love. It's a reciprocal feedback system, right? When you give other than love, you're going to receive, that's going to come back in some way. It's going to be reflected back to you in some way, right? And so using our intimate relationships as a feedback system for how we're relating with life as a whole is really the ultimate point of this. Because how we show up in our varying relationships is really representative of how we show up in our own relationship with ourselves. So we have different mirrors in our life. There's a spiritual sect, an ancient spiritual sect that actually Jesus Christ was part of, called the Essenes. So it's the Essene Gospel of Peace is an amazing book. That's actually how I got into raw food, was through that book. 10, 12, whatever years ago. And one of the teachings of the Essenes is the 7 sacred mirrors. And there's a great video by Greg Braden, who does a 2-hour presentation on this. It's an amazing presentation. It's called the 7 sacred mirrors. And basically what he's talking about is that we have 7 types of mirrors in our varying relationships, whether it's our intimate relationships, it's our professional relationships, familial, friends, colleagues, peers, etc. There's 7 types of mirrors, and we're not going to get into all that because it's quite in depth. I'd just say I'll actually post that video in our group. It's quite amazing. And it really shows you that all of our relationships, all of our connections are mirroring something back to us. Now, a lot of the spiritual world simplifies and waters down so many like sophisticated principles like this. So then you get into this place where it's like you start getting really confused, because you get into a relationship with someone, or some people use spiritual bypassing techniques like gaslighting, and they'll just be like, it's like, oh, it's just a mirror. I'm just being a mirror for you. It's like, no, you're actually being a dick. Like, it's, you know what I mean? It's like, you can't, that's not what I'm talking about, because that other person is getting mirrored back too. So the thing about being a mirror, getting a mirror reflection, is that you have to take responsibility for the mirror. And the other person needs to take responsibility for their mirror. Now, there's different types of mirrors in this sense. It doesn't mean that somebody is it doesn't mean that somebody's mirroring back where you are right now. They could be mirroring old judgments that you used to have, but you no longer have. It's a weird thing. So like, you could be getting something from somebody and being like, whoa, that's really weird. And you're like in this thought process of like, okay, like, what in them is being reflected to me? And you could really be like perplexed, like, I just really don't think that that's really accurate. Well, it may not have anything to do with your present moment. It may have to do with old stuff from way back when. That's literally just kind of coming up and being revealed through you, or to you through them. And it's hard to like, it's hard to fully articulate all this, because it's not easy to explain. That's why I'm going to just share that video with you. But basically what I'm trying to get at here with this is that in some way, shape, or form, the world and the people in our world are always reflecting back to us aspects of ourselves that we get to learn from. So this ties back to how I started the whole conversation, which was being able to listen. This is the power of listening. Listening, observing, being present with the people in our life, hearing where they're coming from, because there's always a message for us in everything if we're able to see it, if we're able to feel it, right? And that's how we are able to support other people and help them, is by actually listening to what they have for us. And then also being aware of what comes up in us in response or in reflection to that particular relationship. Because what comes up in us is also an indication of, well, it's an experience that we're having, right? So we're having our own experience of something coming up through us. So that's our experience, right? So to actually like be with our own experience and to like feel into like what's coming up for me, what's being triggered, what's arising in me in response or relationship to this individual or this particular situation. So using the mirror to find out more about ourselves so we can actually continue to develop that relationship with ourselves, get to know ourselves more, so we can actually create what it is that we want to create in our life through honest reflection, through being honest with ourselves. And we can't be truly honest with ourselves if A, we don't have that relationship with ourselves, but also B, we don't know how to engage with other people that can share with us feedback, whether it's nonverbal or it is verbal, so we can continue to learn and grow. So let me pause on that. That's a lot. There's a lot there. So let me pause on that. Let's open this up for some conversation. I'd love to get a sense of your thoughts and maybe any questions to clarify anything. This is quite a lot that we just kind of went into. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. And you can just popcorn style, you can just hop on if you're able to. No questions, no comments. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, whenever you're able to, Jody. And I'm going to assume Allison and Jane, you're not able to hop on at the moment.
Joshua's going, I don't understand. I'm kicking you out of the room. Why? Because I don't want you here for this. First of all, let me apologize for coming on late. It's Leora's birthday and my mother was here and we were opening presents, and so I apologize.
No worries.
But I think I got out of this what I needed to. Yeah, I have a question, and I commented earlier. Okay, I'm instantly going to go into tears. When you first put this up, that I knew this is why I'm in this program, because this is where I'm stuck.
Okay.
And I've known it for a long time, and a lot of this makes sense. But I think I need a little bit more pushing or help. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So, trying to sum. I was that girl as a late teenager, 20-something, who was not smart about the use of my sexual energy. I called myself a serial monogamist, but it was one boyfriend after the next, after the next, after the next.
Mhm.
And I had issues around, my stepfather was very, what's the word I want? Objectifying. Like,
Uh-huh.
he would be the guy that would flirt with anybody around us, and we'd be boogie boarding, and he'd be taking family videos, and all of a sudden on the family video you'd see him follow the girl in the white bikini
Wow.
down the beach. It was that kind of thing. And my mother was sort of the opposite, very puritanical, wait till you're married.
Uh-huh.
So I got very mixed messages around, in order to have the man in the relationship you want, you have to be the girl in the white bikini, but then that makes you bad and you should feel ashamed of that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so I've had this war going on always. And it's somewhere where my husband and I are stuck in our relationship,
Mm.
and I'm stuck there. And so I know the story, I see it intellectually, but emotionally I'm not getting all the way through it.
Yeah.
And I know that this relates to the ability to actually create the physical money, not just the manifestation of stuff.
Right.
Because money equals safety in my mind, and I don't feel safe inherently physically
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because of these mixed emotions.
Mm.
And so you can see as I'm talking, I'm putting it all together.
Yep.
But this is it. This is the hump I need to get over. And I know it, but I'm still not quite sure how to get over it. So if you have any reading, insights, push, I could really, really use that. Currently, my husband and I have a great relationship. He's my best friend, but physically, it's a mess.
Okay.
And it needs to be fixed, and I don't know how.
Okay.
So I'm being really open here and really vulnerable.
Yep.
Because I'm really ready to get over whatever this block is.
Yep.
So there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I definitely will say that, that particular scenario, it's involving two people, and that's beyond the scope of my work. Although I've been brought into intermediary situations before.
But it's about me. Like, if I heal me, the rest will work out.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. So, I mean, just as far as your process, I would say, like, those conflicts that you have in yourself from your upbringing, you need to collapse those, because neither one of them are really valid. And you're way beyond that point anyway. So these are all just kind of old residue and old kind of ideas that it's really just energy. It's just tension in your body. So if you want to relate that to the money, then it's just blocked energy, right? From your upbringing. So, like, I would really just say, like, really just doing a series of, Ho'oponopono practices for forgiveness, forgiving yourself in particular for even taking this on and carrying it with you. And I mean, there's more in-depth practices that I would do in more of a one-on-one setting to actually go through, like, collapsing old belief structures. But once you know that those structures are hollow and there's no validity to them and there's no relevancy for you, then they kind of start collapsing on their own. And the rest of it is just residue of energy. So I think from that perspective, you just need to update yourself on where you are right now and where you want to be. And there's, there's more to this process than meets the eye. So the only thing I would say as far as a practice you can do is really just a practice I put all my clients through that are having trouble energetically, which is you put your left hand on your heart, you put your right hand on your belly, and you just practice, like, really deep restorative breathing. Usually, like, laying down is really helpful. And you basically just breathe, you inhale into your heart, and then you exhale everything else. And you just go through this process for like 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is, whatever you need. Even like 5 minutes is effective. And you get more centered into your heart. And all that energy that's stored in the solar plexus, which is where your power is, all that fear energy, all that entangled energy, you want to bring it and rise it up into your heart so it can be alchemized through the power of your heart. Because the heart can get blocked pretty easily by all of this. So it's accessing the power of your heart so you can get back to your love.
No, that all makes sense. Like, I think I just needed the visual.
Yeah.
Because I get it, you know, it's that mental thing. I get it. Like, I know all of this.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'm too smart for my own good. And so I can intellectualize everything, which means I don't have to feel it.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of getting my brain out of my way, getting that mind out of my way so I can think through my heart. So what you just said makes a lot of sense to me. Like that gives my head a structure to hold so that I can let go of thinking about it. Does that make sense? So I can get past that intellectual energy.
Yeah. Well, you just need to get into your body.
Yeah.
Like, you just need to like drop all the structures altogether and just get into your body. Like, forget about the structures. Like this is a body process. This has nothing to do with the head. It's like, that's why you do this practice, because it just gets you right into your heart and gets you right into your body. Like, the head is the thing that messes up intimacy. It gets in the way. We're thinking too much, and then we're not connected to our body, so things aren't working. So yeah, that to me, I think is like, that's the best thing I have for you in the moment, and just like the context that we have.
No, that's very helpful. Because like I said, I've been working on this for a long time. I'm right there. I know I'm right there.
Yeah.
But I just, need that push.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand.
Thank you.
And if Jane or Allison is able to come on, wants to come on, would love to have you share, would love to get your feedback or any questions or any comments from this call so far. That would be amazing. Okay, so let's so I'm gonna close us out then. So let's do a recap on our entire call today. So relationship intelligence. Obviously this could have gone in different directions. I wanted to focus it on the art and mastery of communication, and understanding that most of our communication is nonverbal. Most of it is really, the art of communication is done mostly through listening and feeling. And once we have the opportunity to listen to somebody and really feel them, then our communication is much more effective. It's more direct, it's more relevant, and we're not waiting for our turn to talk. We're not building up our own response just to wait for our turn to talk. We're actually genuinely listening to somebody with no agenda, which is the key to success in our businesses, successes in our relationships. It's really the success to everything, because it also translates to your ability to listen to life, which is an incredible point, because we just get out there and we're just like doing, trying to make things happen. But all the while, very seldomly are we actually listening to the feedback from life to respond to what life is giving us. So we're trying to give life everything we got, but maybe we're going in the wrong direction because we haven't been listening. We haven't been paying attention. Who knows? Things aren't aligning. Things aren't clicking. So listening is the key to effective communication. And then the other thing that we really dropped in about was the connection between sexual energy, life force, Kundalini energy, and how that translates to our health and our vitality. We didn't really go into that, but like that's something we've talked throughout the program, and just cultivating and nourishing that life force energy within ourselves and its connection to money, its connection to relationships, its connection to our sexuality, everything like that, nourishing and cultivating and recirculating that energy within ourselves through our thoughts, through our heart, through our emotions, through our spiritual practice, through what we put in our body, our movement practices. All of these things are nourishing life force. And when we have more of that life force built up and charged, we can put that energy towards our desires, towards our dreams through the power of intention. So being very intentional about where we put our energy. That's how we manifest. That's how we create, is through our intention backed up with action. But the action is almost meaningless if there's no intention behind it. The action without intention is just spewing energy into the world, masturbating energy into the world and leaking energy. But with the right intention and clear focus, that's where the power is. And then all of a sudden our actions become more effective, more powerful, and we're able to generate greater and greater results. And miracles can manifest in our life, just like I was sharing about the miracle that has manifested in my life through just a simple and sincere intention. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out. It's not about being perfect or being perfectly in alignment, whatever that even means. It's really just about being sincere, being honest, being genuine, and being earnest. And, just being clear about where you want to go and what you want, and listening to your heart. Using your heart as the navigation system, not using the mind. The mind will help focus the heart, but the heart will tell you what's real. So tapping into that energy, where is your love? Wherever your love is, that's where your attention should go. That's the key. That's your source of power. And through doing that, you're going to develop more relationship intelligence, RI, instead of IQ, is it? So it'd be RQ, I guess, relationship intelligence quotient, right? So you're going to become more intelligent about your relationships, your relationship with yourself and with others, and that will help to develop more harmony, fostering more harmony in your life, more loyalty, more support, more abundant connection to every area of our life by being in that practice each and every day. So that's it for me. That's everything I wanted to get off and share with everybody in this call. What I would say as an alignment assignment is I would just like to have everyone do a short video on Facebook or on our Facebook group, and I'd love to know what is a key insight that you gain from this particular topic on relationships, on relationship intelligence, because there's a lot of territory that we covered. So I'd like to just get in a sense of what was what really came out for you, what really popped out for you from this. That's what I would love to see from everybody this week, as soon as you can. That's what I'm really interested in. I want to know your feedback. I want to know what really popped up for you and what was most helpful about this call and this subject. So that's it for me. So there we go. I'm wishing you an amazing rest of your day. Hope you have the best day ever. And, just focus on your intention. What do you want to create today? Just put it into action. What is it that you want to create? What kind of state of feeling, of being do you want to be in? And how can you better communicate and receive from your relationships in your life Put this all into action today, and let's see what happens. All right, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks, Ronnie.
You're welcome.